Well, I finally did it. I beat all 3 Fire Emblem Fates pathways and have seen the game from all 3 perspectives. With that said, I feel now is the best time to talk about the characters in Fates as a whole, rather than from a single pathway, because hot damn Fates, you really outdid yourself with the characters. I already made it obvious I love the Fates characters in both Conquest and Birthright, but after seeing what they're like in all 3 pathways, as well as taking into account the neutral characters, I can safely say that the characters from Fire Emblem Fates are in my top 3 Fire Emblem teams or characters per game. In fact, I love them so much that a top 10 list simply wouldn't cut it, so it's going to be a top 15 list, ladies and gentlemen. Just a few things to clear up before we begin. 1, this is just my opinion, and I'm judging these characters based on all 3 pathways, so their rankings in the Nohr and Hoshido list won't be the exact same. And as always, while the use on the battlefield is important, what matters most to me is the characters themselves and their supports, so please bear that in mind throughout this countdown. 2, I will be acknowledging all the playable units that appear in the game, so characters like Corrin, Azura, Kaze and Felicia could be on this list, but notice how I said could. Thirdly, no child units, because they're going to get their own list at some point, and 4th is that I'm not including NPCs, amiibo characters or bosses, just the characters you can use in all 3 Fates pathways, and yes, there will be spoilers for Fates in general, so bear that in mind. And with all that cleared up, it's time to embrace the light and the dark in order to shape the future and see which character will lead the way, as it is them who are truly Okay, we talked about this in Hoshido characters, and I'm not going to tell you again, you're not allowed to mention Nephany in regards to this character. Fine, but it's really hard not to, the similarities between them are too obvious to ignore. I don't care, you're not doing it. Oh come on Xander, please!
Silence!
Fine, you win, I won't mention her. Good, then I'll be off. So starting off we have a Bora. Wow, the 4th best Hoshido character just barely makes the list, talk about hitting the ground running. Yes, starting off this list we have a Bora, a character who didn't change much between Birthright and Revelations, both gameplay and character wise, but some of her new supports were cool and she was able to hold her own even till the end of the game. Bora first appears in Chapter 9 of Birthright and 10 of Revelations and is one of Takumi's retainers alongside Hinata. Because of her backstory, Bora has a hatred for Nohr due to the death of her parents, and because of this she has some strong supports in Revelations with other Nohrians like Baruka that also help to flesh out her backstory and understand that not all Nohrians are evil. Outside of that, she doesn't change much compared to Birthright, but she's still a very fun character, and her taste and passion for fashion makes her rather unique for a Fire Emblem character. As such, Bora has uniqueness and depth, much like Nephar. Oh god, I'm sorry, what happened again? Man, that guy could be terrifying. Gameplay-wise, Bora in both pathways is one of the most well-rounded and reliable units in the game, making her someone I could take into any chapter no problem. Being a spear fighter, Bora has balanced stats and growth rates across the board, only lacking in magic and resistance, so she could work for offense, defense and support, as well as being a unit who was great when paired with the more exotic weapons like the dual or guard Naginata. Not to mention, Bora appears very early on in both pathways, so she can be trained up and promoted very early as well, making her a very viable early game unit. Being a good if not great character doesn't mean you have to be the best at something. Sometimes you just have to be well rounded and have enough going for you to stand on your own 2 feet, which is exactly the case with Bora, as she is a very fun character with personality and depth, and is one of the most well-rounded and reliable units on the battlefield, just like Nephany from the Tellius series.
No mercy!
Oh shit, no, I'm sorry, someone help me! Well, that was easy to deal with. Man, Xander wasn't as strong as I thought he would be, which makes sense considering how easy he was in Birthright, but make no mistake, Paladins should not be taken lightly and can be surprisingly effective most of the time, just like the number 14 on this list, Corrin's unofficial retainer, Silas. Man, talk about a total BFF. I mean, Silas is a character that follows you regardless of pathway, and his entire reason for being in the game is because of you, but he's also one of the most well-rounded and reliable units in any pathway, given that he's a cavalier. Silas is certainly one swell guy, and a true friend through and through. Now I feel bad for when I play female Corrin, because he's probably going to get friend-zoned. Silas is a soldier in the Nohrian army who appears in all pathways. Silas is one of Corrin's oldest friends, who he played with during childhood and was the sole reason Silas became a knight. Yet Corrin at first can't recall who Silas is. Man, Corrin, you have some pretty shitty memory considering Silas went through all that just for you. Silas is very much the Franz or Oscar-like character you see in Fire Emblem, in the sense that not only is he an early game cavalier, but also that Silas himself is a very honest and noble person. Silas is the type of person who can talk to just about anyone and is very understanding and compassionate, while at the same time holding true to his ideals and what he believes in. His supports reflect this, as more often than not, he's willing to listen to people and help them with their problems, as well as share his own perspective on things, which allows the characters to open up to him and reveal more about themselves. Gameplay wise, just like with Oscar and Franz, Silas is a very well rounded and reliable unit, being someone who could work in just about any situation, and while not excelling in any areas, wasn't sufficiently lacking in them either. Being a cavalier, Silas has solid growth rates all around, doing well in strength, skill and defense, but lacking in resistance, making him an all-around good unit. And this includes his promotions to either a paladin or a great knight, though personally I prefer the paladin. Silas is the type of unit who was there when I needed him and do whatever needed to be done at the time, as he can run offense, defense and support, and can even be one of the more standout units if given some of the better weapons in the game, making him a unit you won't regret sticking with and should never let you down no matter what. It's always nice to know that someone has your back and will always be there for you. And well, Silas man, you are just that, being a very good character that is a best friend through and through, as well as being a unit I can always rely on. I guess you really are a true knight. Also, funny enough, Silas is voiced by Pip from Kid Icarus. Man, now all I can think about is the Fates characters having an Uprising style conversation.
There's something weird about this fighter, Lady Palutena.
That's Robin, also known as the Avatar.
I wonder where Crom is.
Who knows? Probably taking a nap at home.
I'm no idle layabout.
Whoa! Where did you come from?
Raise the grand
Being a soldier in an army filled with lords, princes and princesses can be rather daunting and intimidating, especially if not exactly of a high social standing or upper class if you will. So you can imagine how bad it must be when you're a villager of all things, or at least Mozu can. Well, considering Fates was heavily inspired by Awakening in many aspects, it only makes sense that this game would have its own version of Donald, only this time the villager is a girl. Yes, coming in at number 13 we have Mozu, who acts as this game's Donald being the villager class, as well as being the standout oddball in the group due to her backstory, but also manages to be one of the most interesting and endearing characters in Fates. Mozu first appears in Paralog 1 of Fates, where her village is attacked by Faceless and she is the only one to survive. After being saved by Corrin, she requests to join his army as there is nothing left for her, so already Mozu has a rather tragic story arc. Being a villager, Mozu isn't exactly someone with extensive knowledge about fighting, or hell, being around nobles and knights. As such, Mozu is very shy and self-conscious, as she often doubts herself and her abilities, thinking she's not good enough to be in the army. But despite this, she's a lovely girl who often uses her knowledge of farming to help out in other areas like medicine and supplies. Her supports reflect this, as often she uses her knowledge to find better ways to overcome certain situations like with Tsubaki, and her other supports also help her to grow more confident in herself and what she can do, just like with Bora. I find Mozu to be a very sweet and endearing character, as I sympathise with her doubts about herself, and I'm happy whenever people help to boost her confidence, and I like how her skills as a farmer make her useful outside of just fighting. Gameplay wise, Mozu is very much like Donald, in the sense that she starts out bad, but has fantastic growth rates that can lead her to being one of, if not the strongest characters on your team. Stat wise, Mozu isn't too bad starting out, but her growth rates are insane, at least her physical growth rate, since she has a 60% growth in strength along with 75% growth in luck, making her a great offensive and support unit when she has enough levels under her belt. While training her may seem like a hard task, the Paralog she is in has loads of fates that Mozu can use to experience grind and gain lots of levels to carry her through the rest of the game. Adding to that, she does well as a Master of Arms when she promotes, but personally I found her to be a fantastic Dread fighter, as she was easily the best early to mid game units because of her class change. Being around those of a higher class can be very intimidating, especially if you yourself are seen as someone of a low class, which is probably how Mozu felt once she joined Corrin's army. But Mozu proves that she has what it takes to stand on her own, being a unit with amazing growth rates and the potential to be one of the best units in the game, along with being a very sweet character with strong supports that help her character to grow and show off her skills and knowledge to benefit others. All I can say is that I'm glad Fates fixed the second seal system, otherwise Mozu would be a literal god.
Raise the
Sometimes being yourself is easier said than done, especially if what you are doesn't truly reflect what people think you should be. Well, at the end of the day, you should be happy with who you are, not what you're supposed to be, and those who appreciate you for who you are true friends, which is a lesson Charlotte learnt and then some. You know, some characters in Fire Emblem get a bad rep because of how they appear on the surface, so people are very quick to judge them without getting to know them and experience their supports. Charlotte is a prime example of this, since I've seen a lot of people call Charlotte nothing more than a shameless gold digger based on how she appears on the surface. But for those who dig deeper will find Charlotte to be a much more interesting and even sympathetic character, as well as, in my opinion, the best warrior in the Fire Emblem series. Charlotte is a Nohrian soldier who appears in Chapter 13 of Conquest and 14 of Revelations alongside Benny the Knight. On the surface, Charlotte appears to be nothing more than a helpless damsel in distress who always seems to flirt and get the attention of men, mostly rich men, and with a body like that, who can blame her? Now, I ain't saying she a gold digger, since in reality she loves to fight and is one of the strongest people in the army. In her support, she reveals that she acts the way she does in order to gain money so that she can send it back to her parents, as they supported her despite being very poor and she wants to help them out. But in the end, pretty much every character like Xander and Leo tell her that she should embrace who she really is and be proud of it rather than ashamed, which helps Charlotte to come to terms with who she really is and what she does best. Which she should. You're a great girl, Charlotte.
Thank you. I really like spending time with you.
My pleasure, but don't get too close or someone's not going to be happy. Gameplay wise, Charlotte is a character that fully embraces the best and worst aspects of her respective class, which makes her a bit of a hit and miss unit, but when she has the advantage, nothing can stop her. Being a warrior, Charlotte's best stats and growth rates are in her HP, strength and speed, while her defense, magic and resistance are very poor. As such, Charlotte is a true glass cannon, being able to deal massive damage and easily double the enemy, as well as probably having the highest critical hit rate I've seen in any Fire Emblem character, but at the same time not being good at tanking enemy hits or fighting classes that have an advantage against her. Charlotte also becomes disgusting once she promotes, since as a berserker she just crits and destroys everything, and as a hero her stats are more balanced and her skill Soul can help to make her more tank-like and reliable. Sometimes being yourself isn't easy, but trying to be something you're not is not the right way to go about things, and at the end of the day you should be proud of who you are, and well, that's something I'm sure Charlotte can sympathise with, as she is a fun and interesting character who learns to be true to herself, as well as being a unit that what she does well, she does better than anyone else in the game. Not to mention being a character that I feel gets judged too harshly for how she appears on the surface, and believe me, she's not the only one.
Raise the grand reveal.
You know, having both Nohr and Hoshido join forces in Revelations, while being a great achievement, also ended up being rather awkward given the history of these two nations, and the worst part about having these two nations join forces was having my Conquest wife Camilla find out about my Birthright wife Kagura. I must say it's a good thing you're trained in ninjutsu, Kagura, since your ability to appear otherwise invisible saved you from Camilla's wrath on many occasions, since from my experience, ninjas don't exactly do well against women units. Yes, coming in at number 11 we have Kagura, who aside from coming in second on best Birthright characters and being my Birthright wife, was one of the most useful units on the battlefield and a lot more down to earth and relatable character than most of the rather over the top characters in Fates. Kagura first appears in Chapter 10 of Birthright and Chapter 11 of Revelations, and is one of Ryoga's retainers alongside Silas. Kagura, being a ninja, is a very serious and strict person who puts her duties above everything else, but at the same time she has a life outside of her work and is comfortable being friends with and talking with others. Her support reflects this as she discusses her duties as a retainer and what motivates her, but also shows others what her hobbies are and often likes to help them out whenever possible, making her a more down-to-earth character, which is something I really like about Kagura, and even though not much about her changes in Revelations, I still love her. Gameplay-wise, Kagura was an awesome ninja, but also had similar traits to both Charlotte and Nyx, in the sense that she had both very high and very low stats and growth rates, but her high points more than made up for her low points. Kagura has very good strength, speed and resistance, but has low skill, luck and defense. As such, Kagura is the type of character that greatly suffers when at a disadvantage, but also excels more than most units when the situation favours her, so whenever she was needed most, she pulled through every time, which is very often considering she was one of the best characters to take on magic units. Even if Hoshido and Nohr joining forces was awkward, it was still great to see both nations working together, and I was overjoyed to see my Birthright wife Kagura coming back to the team, being just as great of a character as she was in Birthright, and just as great of a unit too. Though I'm sorry to cut your time short, Kagura, but you might want to make yourself scarce, because Camilla's coming this way. Phew, that was close.
Raise the grand
So we've reached the number 10 spot, and now we have the first royal unit to make the best characters list. I mean, how could I have my favourite royal units be lower than the number 10 spot, since they're such good characters and some of them are my favourite Fire Emblem characters, and the first royal unit to hit the ground running is the brother who felt like people didn't appreciate him enough and he was overshadowed by his siblings. But don't worry, I appreciate you for all your worth, Leo. Ah, you see, Leo, there are those who notice you, since coming in 10th place out of all the Fates characters is very impressive, and you were a character who I first thought I was going to hate, but then ended up loving because of your character and use on the battlefield. I guess you have the devil's own luck. Leo is the second youngest of the Nohr siblings and appears around the middle of each pathway. Leo is highly intelligent and a brilliant strategist, often regarded as one of the greatest minds in Nohr, since he always comes up with the best plans and knows how to make every situation favour him. But with that said, Leo feels underappreciated, since Corrin and Elise get all the attention from Xander and Camilla, and thus he's a bit cold and blunt. His supports often show how his intelligence can be used to benefit others, and show his more warmer side, as well as addressing his need for attention, and how those around him do notice his talents and usefulness, the best example being his support with Hinoka. Gameplay wise, Leo is a very strong unit and easily the best Dark Knight in any Fire Emblem game. But that being said, he's not exactly the strongest unit in the game, even when compared to some of the other non-royal units, but he's still awesome regardless. Leo has overall balanced stats across the board, excelling in magic, HP, and is pretty much solid in everything else, and being a pre-promoted unit, he's one of the best units for the first couple of chapters he's available. Because of his balanced stats and class, Leo can do well against just about anyone, and is rather versatile. However, towards the end of the game, he starts to suffer against very high level units like ninjas and enemies with very high resistance, but he shits on generals and other mages, so he's still useful. When your older siblings are people like Xander and Camilla, it can be hard to be noticed for what you've achieved. But hey Leo, I certainly appreciate all you do, as you are a kick-ass unit and one of the most intriguing characters in Fates, so you're always welcome on my Conquest and Revelations team, for your senpai has noticed you, Leo.
raise the grand
Retainers in Fire Emblem always go out of their way to protect who they serve and never seek to hinder them. Unless it's Setsuna, but there's always an exception to the rule. And by far the retainer who works their hardest for who they serve is the boulder busting beauty, Effie. It's always great when in a new Fire Emblem game, your favourite class is one of the best units in the game and a great character. Because man Effie did you hit both those marks and then some, since you are easily the best non-royal unit in Nohr and one of the best units in both Conquest and Revelations, as well as being a very good character, a true retainer if I ever saw one. Effie is Elise's retainer alongside Arthur, and appears in Chapter 7 of Conquest and Chapter 14 of Revelations. Effie takes her role as a retainer very seriously, as she constantly works her hardest to make herself stronger and protect Elise due to her history with her and their friendship. Effie is a very protected person in general, as she always puts herself in harm's way in order to ensure others' safety and spend every other second of the day training. Her supports help to flesh out her backstory, as well as acknowledging how she should be more considerate for her own safety, not to mention her extreme training and eating habits to the point in which she feels like a fusion of Kiel and Ileana. I wonder how they achieved that. Gameplay wise, Effie is just so awesome and is a unit that often carries the entire team throughout some of the hardest chapters of Conquest and Revelations. In fact, I'd go so far as to say she's the overall best unit in the game from my experience, or at least best non-royal unit. Effie excels in defense, HP, luck, and strength in particular, often being able to one-shot most units with even subpar defenses. Her speed and skill were also rather solid, and though she has poor resistance, that's nothing to worry about considering most mages can be killed with one shot, and she could take on just about every physical unit, so Effie was always at the front lines to lead the charge. In Conquest you got Effie right away at the start, so she can easily be the best from the get-go, However, you will need to do some grinding in Revelations, but she's totally worth it in the end. Being a retainer comes with a lot of responsibility, and well, Effie certainly takes her role very seriously, since she works so hard to be the best at what she does, and it certainly paid off in the end, as she is the best non-royal unit in Fates in terms of gameplay, as well as being a strong character in her own right, and she still stands as the second best knight in the Fire Emblem series, only being outdone by Gilliam. Guess you need to train just a little bit harder, and you get to lifting those boulders, you beautiful badass you!
Raise the grand
For those of you who are new to my channel, you should know that I'm a massive sucker for adorableness, so with that in mind, number 8 on this list goes to Princess Elise. God damn it, Elise, because of you I never smiled so much in a Fire Emblem game just because of how cute and delightful you were all the time, aside from Sumiya being my first Fire Emblem wife and all. Cuteness aside, Elise was not only a great character who really improved thanks to her role in Birthright, but also a kick-ass unit and someone who just destroyed Revelations. Elise is the youngest of the Nohr royal family and appears in chapters 7 of Conquest and 14 of Revelations, just like Effie. Being the youngest member, Elise is a very happy and upbeat girl, with a very carefree attitude and is just oozing with adorableness. She is also very friendly and wants nothing more than to make everyone happy, and this is shown greatly in Birthright as she fights against Nohr in order to stop Garen and achieve peace, and in all honesty just to bring the entire family together once again, though sadly things don't exactly end well for her. Oh, the feels! Elise also has some of the best supports in the game, that further show just how lovely and sweet she is, as well as how she was willing to embrace what Hoshido has to offer in order to bring about the two nations together, like her support of Sakura, where they bond through the music they play. Gameplay wise, Elise can potentially be one of the best units on your team if you're willing to put the time in, which is something I suggest you do in Revelations, as you can grind in that game unlike Conquest. But even without grinding, Elise is still a great unit. Elise stat wise has some very impressive luck, magic, speed and resistance stats. Naturally her physical stats are poor, but that's to be expected considering she's a medic. The reason I said it's worth to train her up is that because if she can reach level 20 and promote, her magic and resistance stats reach ridiculous levels, allowing her to destroy almost all units both magic and physical. I mean hell, as a mounted mage she was shitting all over Leo by the time she became a level 10 strategist. Man, now even your little sister is outdoing you, Leo. You really do have the devil's own luck, but not in a good way. Cute characters are something I can't help but love, and my god do I just love you, Elise. I mean, the cuteness alone was enough for me to love you, but you were such a wonderful character who got so much better in Birthright, heartbreak notwithstanding, and you were such a good unit that you have officially become my favourite medic in the Fire Emblem series. Sorry Natasha, sorry Lissa, sorry Maribel, sorry Ellen and sorry Corrin. Elise has claimed the title for herself and she's earned it. Now why don't you and Sakura play a song to celebrate?
Okay Sakura, you ready for this? 3, 2, 1, drop the bass!
Raise the grand
Many new classes like the Ninja class were added to Fire Emblem Fates, with one of my favourites being the Maid and Butler class, because hey man, the main characters are royalty. It's about time we got some maids up in this series. The 3 characters to represent this new class were Flora, who doesn't exactly have a happy ending in Birthright, the Black Butler himself Sebastian. Sir, my name is Jacob. Your name is Sebastian! And finally we have number 7 on this list, the fabulous Felicia. Ah, Felicia, you really should have more confidence in yourself. I know you view yourself as a crappy maiden servant, but personally I don't see it since you were with me from the very beginning right till the end, being a great unit and a great character who was there for me when I needed you the most, so I think you fit the role of maid very well. Felicia is one of Corrin's maids and appears right at the start of Fates and joins you on every pathway, as well as being Flora's sister. Felicia is a lovely lady and is a joy to be around, as she is very warm and caring, as well as being soft and sweet. Now despite being a maid, Felicia is, in all honesty, pretty shit at her job, since she can't cook, can't clean, breaks dishes all the time and makes very simple mistakes constantly due to her extreme levels of clumsiness. However, despite this, Felicia is a kick-ass fighter and a very skilled warrior. That reminds me of someone else from Black Butler, I wonder if the developers were watching this while making the game. Anyway, despite her strength, Felicia prefers to be a maid despite all her fuck-ups, and she does her best to improve herself and not hinder anyone. Her supports reflect this, as often people point out that she's more suited to fighting rather than serving, but Felicia insists on being a maid, and often people will try to help her improve, since Felicia makes it apparent that though she's better at fighting, her heart is set on being a maid, so for her, it's not about being more suited to one job, but preferring to do another job because your heart is set on it, which is something I think all of us YouTubers can sympathise with. Gameplay wise is where Felicia shines, which makes sense given her supports, as she was a unit that was in every map on all pathways, not because she was the best unit, but because she supported the team better than anyone else and was there to back me up and save my ass so many times. Felicia's stat and growth rate wise isn't too great, only really excelling in magic, speed, luck and resistance, and even then not by much. As such, she was a unit who couldn't spearhead the team or tank the enemies unless they were just mages. However, she could support allies and assist them greatly with healing, debuffing, and using all types of staffs to help me or cripple the enemy, and because of her magic stats, once she got a flame shuriken, the rest was history and Felicia would just decimate people like crazy. Sometimes you may not be the best in the world at your job, but as long as you have your heart in the right place and you constantly try to improve yourself, you keep going at it and be the best that you can be, which is a perfect way to describe Felicia, since despite being a bad maid, she tries her best to do all she can because she loves what she does, and she is also a great unit on the battlefield that can help to give your team the real boost it needs. And for that, come and collect your 7th place trophy, Felicia. Just try not to slip on the way up here. Ugh, why did I see that coming?
Raise the grand
You'd think because of certain characters' roles in the story and their background, they'd be exclusive to just one pathway. I mean, Silas is a Knight of Nohr, so you'd think you wouldn't be able to get him in Birthright. But you'll be surprised at who is willing to follow you regardless of which pathway you choose. I mean, that was my reaction when Kaze joined me in Conquest. Ah, my boy Kaze, the ultimate ninja. Yes, Kaze is my favourite of the 3 ninjas in Fire Emblem Fates, not only for being what I consider to be the best of the 3 ninjas and the units in general in terms of performance on the battlefield, but also for his character and support, which there are a lot of considering Kaze's popularity with women. I think you've got competition there, Robin. Kaze's not even the main character, and he's got more waifus than you do. Kaze is the brother of Saizo, and appears in the 2nd chapter of Fates, and eventually joins Corrin in whichever pathway, despite all that goes on beforehand. Man, Kaze is quick to forgive and forget. Kaze's role in the story varies on each pathway, as in Conquest he joins to fight Hoshido and his own brother, which you can imagine puts quite a strain on his heart, and in Birthright he could potentially die if him and Corrin don't reach A support. By the way, thanks for the heads up to everyone who warned me about this. Despite being a ninja, Kaze is a lot more open and friendly than most ninjas, since he's easily approachable and has no problem talking to others. He also has a heart of gold, as he always goes out of his way to help others without the need for thanks or favours, as well as not letting his own personal problems affect those around him. Because of this, Kaze is quite popular among the group, in particular women, due to his looks and kind-hearted nature, but at the end of the day his duties come first when the situation calls for it. And his supports often show and address this, as he often ends up attracting lots of attention because of his helpfulness even though he doesn't want it, as well as expanding upon his backstory, like with Corrin and his brother Saizo. Gameplay wise, Kaze was a fantastic unit on the battlefield, who was with me in Conquest, Birthright and Revelations, and my god did he really help me in the team, because most of the time there was nothing Kaze couldn't do and not a single opponent he couldn't defeat. Kaze has strong stats and growth rates in all stats aside from magic, luck and defense, having very good skill, HP and resistance, as well as having an 85% speed growth. Move aside Sonic, Kaze is now the fastest thing alive. Despite his stats, I found Kaze to be the most well-rounded ninja of all 3, since he didn't suffer from Saizo's low speed and resistance, or Kagura's low skill and HP. Kaze was a lot more versatile than those 2 when it came to fighting enemies, and thus more useful. Plus, if given the right shuriken, Kaze can take on just about anyone and come out on top, further increasing his potency and usefulness. Sometimes people will follow you regardless of their feelings or background, because it didn't matter that Kaze was a ninja from Hoshido and an enemy of Nohr. Kaze followed me wherever I went, and I'm ever so grateful for it, because you were a great character that I was always happy to see and interact with, as well as being the best ninja in the game and one of the overall best units in the game. Damn it Kaze, you've got it where it counts.
Raise the grand
Okay, so in top 10 Conquest characters, both Camilla and Xander were tied for first place, and now that I've played through all pathways, I can now officially say that the second best Nohr character is my wife Camilla. I'm really sorry about this, honey, but when push comes to shove, I have to concede the victory to Xander in terms of being the best Nohr character. But don't get too upset since you're still a fantastic character and one of the best units in the game, so good that you landed 5th place out of all the characters in Fate. That's something you can certainly be proud of. Camilla is the eldest sister of the Nohr siblings and appears quite early on in Conquest, Birthright and Revelations. Being the eldest sister, Camilla acts very much like a mother figure to her siblings and other members of the army, as she is very warm and caring, not to mention being very affectionate and protective, to the point in which she'll gladly kill anyone in order to keep them safe, and I mean anyone. Camilla's role in the story is similar to Elise, where she simply wants to have everyone be together as a family, and like Leo, doesn't agree with what Garen does, but obeys him since she doesn't want to die, which shows that Camilla does have depth, you know, when the game isn't sexualizing her to the point in which she becomes insulting, and she cares a lot for Corrin. In fact, she cares a little too much for Corrin, which often leads people to quickly dismiss her, but those topics are a discussion for another video. Camilla also has a lot of strong supports that go into her backstory and why she acts as a maternal figure, along with doing what she can to bring out the best in people and aid them whenever possible. And I like her supports with the Hoshido royals, especially her support with Ryoma, where both realise that being centered around Corrin is a bad thing. No fucking shit! Gameplay wise, Camilla is one of the best units of both Conquest and Revelations, and is often vital if you want to survive both games, especially Conquest because that game doesn't fuck around. Camilla is an incredibly well-rounded and versatile unit, being a BlazingKnight, as she has access to both axes and magic, but on top of that her stats and growth rates are also very well balanced aside from luck, as she tends to do well in skill, speed, strength and resistance, making her a unit that can take on just about anyone and run offense, defense and support. This made Camilla a vital unit on the team as she could be useful in just about every situation, and since she was an early game pre-promote, she got through some of the more difficult parts of the game, which in the case of Conquest was all the damn time. It sucks that you didn't make the best Nohr characters, honey, but that doesn't detract from just how amazing you are, being an interesting and lovable character along with one of the best and most useful units in the game. Camilla, it's no wonder you are my first Fire Emblem Fates wife. Now how about I make it up to you with that face pill you always wanted? My treat.
I like where this is going, but I want to get there even faster.
Camilla, please, there are people watching. Give me 10 more minutes.
Raise the flag with
You know, a lot of characters have been moved up or down from their respective position based on the events that evolved in every pathway. Since Elise got bumped up 2 spaces and Leo dropped down by 1 space, and in this case my favourite character from Birthright specifically has now become my second favourite character from Hoshido. Yes everyone, it's Lord Ryoma. Ooh, going from first best to 4th must really sting Ryoma, but don't feel bad dude, and please don't commit suicide, it isn't that big of a deal. You're still a great character and one of the best units in the game, so I haven't lost any respect for you. I mean, Camilla went from joint 1st to 5th and she's still just as great as she always was. That's probably the reason I paired you two together in Revelations. Ryoma is the eldest of the Hoshido siblings and soon to be Emperor of Hoshido after Mikoto was killed on the charge of being an anime mother. I swear the number of these cases are increasing rapidly. Ryoma, being the leader of Hoshido, has a very headstrong and level-headed demeanour, as well as being a very charismatic and caring leader in order to help inspire his followers. Like Mikoto, he strives for peace and is willing to look at things from various perspectives, a good example being in Birthright, where he understands that Nohr has little resources and is willing to aid the country once the war is over. And in Revelations, he's one of the quickest to put his feelings aside towards Nohr for the greater good. He also has some very good supports that further emphasize his role as a leader and mentor, as well as how he tries his hardest to get along with Nohr and is willing to overlook the history of hatred. Gameplay wise, it is now official. Ryoma is the best Swordmaster in the Fire Emblem series. Ryoma being a Swordmaster has very high offensive stats like speed, skill, strength and HP, and his defense and resistance aren't too bad either, making Ryoma a complete package and one of the more well-rounded Swordmasters. In Birthright, Ryoma was a god, and in Revelations he was still awesome, often being one of the front runners for my team and landing Astra and critical hits more than normal hits. but he did suffer against ninjas, I found, which makes me question why both his retainers are ninjas. I mean, God forbid Kagura gets pissed off at you, Ryoga. But even with that, he was still an amazing unit who could carry you through the majority of Revelations and pretty much all of Birthright. While you're no longer my favourite Hoshido unit, I still think you're amazing, Ryoga, and you are now my favourite Swordmaster in the Fire Emblem series, being a great and well-developed character and an almost godlike unit all things considered. Just keep an eye on your retainers, and don't let them get too strong, otherwise you'll end up just like Mikoto.
Raise the grand
CRASHX500, we have a problem. Elise? Okay, what's the problem? I accidentally killed Ninian. Oh, that's terrible. Wait, what do you mean we have a problem?
CRASHX500, I've lost my brother.
I killed Jill's father.
He killed my father! I haven't promoted yet. I suck at my job. There's a rebellion in Crimea. I baked you a pie.
Sumia, not now.
Nasala betrayed us again.
I'm just an asshole.
I fucked Crumb's daughter.
He fucked my daughter! We can't beat Chapter 10! Okay, everyone, I have the perfect solution. Just blame Takumi. I'm sorry, Takumi, for pinning the blame on you once again, but you're such an easy target, God bless your soul. Well, even if Takumi is the ultimate Fire Emblem punching bag, that doesn't stop him from being a really great and complex character that is now my favourite Hoshido unit, and is arguably one of the most interesting characters in the Fire Emblem series. Takumi is the second youngest of the Hoshido royal family, and appears early on in both Birthright and Revelations. Takumi is a very interesting character as he is a more than capable warrior and very intelligent, but rather cold towards others due to his inferiority complex, much like Leo, only far worse. Takumi is the character who is easily impacted the most by the pathway you choose, because in Birthright he still has doubts towards Corrin and even temporarily becomes possessed, and in Conquest his hatred and pain cause his soul to become completely corrupted because you left Hoshido. As such, Takumi portrays the entire point of Fates and how the choice you make affects those around you for better or for worse. Takumi's supports help to show his lighter side and more friendly attitude, as well as how others do notice just how capable he is and convince him not to doubt himself, much like Leo. In fact, these two are almost identical. Does that mean we're going to start blaming Leo now? #blame Leo. Gameplay wise, Takumi is definitely one of the most potent units in the game and someone who can be downright disgusting when he has an opening. Stat wise, Takumi has great growth rates all around, excelling in skill, HP, strength and speed, with his only flaw being resistance, making him a great offensive unit and an amazing support unit, due to the amount of critical hits he lands. Because Takumi starts out as an archer, he can become very strong stat-wise, and his weapon, the Fujin Yumi, is insanely awesome. But does that make him the best archer in the Fire Emblem series? I'm gonna say no. Shion is still better because of Takumi's shitty resistance, but holy shit does he come close. Once again Takumi, you got the short end of the stick. The events of Fire Emblem Fates and the path you choose will affect those around you and cause major changes for better or worse, and no character portrays this better than Takumi, as the events of Birthright, Conquest and Revelation show drastically different sides of Takumi, making him one of the most complex characters in the Fire Emblem series, and he's an incredibly good unit on the battlefield, going so far as to be the second best archer in the Fire Emblem series. You see Takumi, you are a great character. You can trust me to have your back. Hey dude, someone just killed my father. Takumi did it. You son of a bitch! Works every time.
Raise the grand
While seeing as we've seen who the best Birthright character is, it only makes sense that we talk about the best Conquest character. And yes, there's no surprise that the best character in Nohr is the Crown Prince of Nohr. Well, congratulations Xander, you successfully outdid Camilla in a contest of who's the better character, as well as becoming an even better character from the events that take place in both Birthright and Revelations, and still being one of the best units in the game. Man, Xander, you just keep getting better by the minute. Xander is the Crown Prince of Nohr and the eldest of the Nohr siblings, who appears around the middle of Conquest and Revelations. Being the Prince of Nohr, Xander has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, and thus takes his role very seriously and is rather stern. But he cares deeply for his family and has the utmost loyalty to his father. In fact, depending on the pathway, his loyalty is tested, as in Conquest and Revelations, he has to be changed slowly and show Garen's true intentions, whereas in Birthright, your betrayal clouds his judgment and blinds him to Garen's evil. This makes Xander, like Takumi, a pretty complex character who is affected greatly by your choice, and helps to portray the overall theme of Fire Emblem Fates. Xander also has great support as he often tries to help others as best as possible, even if it means scolding them, as well as trying to make the best out of a difficult situation, as well as helping others to accept the reality of things, a good example being his support with Ryoga. Gameplay wise, Xander is one of the best units in the game, and though he often won't decimate enemies like Ryoga and Takumi, he's incredibly reliable and can work in just about every situation, so you pretty much can't go wrong with Xander. Xander is a very well-rounded unit in all stats aside from resistance and having slightly low speed for a paladin, making him a very versatile unit and being able to take on just about anyone, no problem whatsoever, as well as work as an offensive, defensive and support unit, so he's someone who's essential for every chapter from when he's available. Does that make Xander the best paladin? Well, character-wise I think he's better than Seth, but gameplay-wise because of the low resistance and speed, Seth is overall better, so call it a tie for best paladin. It makes sense that the Prince of Nohr ended up being the best character in Nohr, as Xander was a very interesting and complex character that changed a lot based on each pathway and was an awesome unit who I could always rely on no matter the situation. Anyway, onto the number 1 entry. But before that, I have to say Xander, you must have really wanted Garen to go back to the way he was considering your loyalty to him, even though he thought of you as nothing more than a pawn. You know, you can be a real bastard sometimes.
Raise the grind with
So we've reached the number 1 spot, and now it's time to reveal who I think is the best character in Fire Emblem Fates, and I didn't have to think twice about who the best character was, since just from a single pathway I knew this character would be my favourite, and after exploring the other 2 pathways, they further cemented themselves as the best character in Fates, and if they were to ask me to describe them, I would simply say to them,
life beyond the shore, just out of reach.
amazing. Honestly, Azura, you are just amazing, and I knew from Conquest alone that you were the best character in Fates. I mean, you are the very embodiment of everything Fate stands for and Fire Emblem as a whole, as well as being such an interesting and unique character, and you are also a surprisingly awesome unit, even more so for being this game's equivalent to the Dancer. Azura is an interesting case, as she, like Corrin, is a Nohrian princess but was raised in Hoshido, though Revelations reveals her true origins. And she follows Corrin regardless of the choice made, and motivates and encourages Corrin to stay true to that choice. Not much is known about Azura, and she is a very mysterious character. As such, she often doesn't talk to people, and is rather withdrawn, but is a very nice and friendly person when the situation calls for it, as well as being rather soft, but she has her limits and will have a go at people who push her too far. And her supports reflect this, as she is often reluctant to talk too much to people, but will open up and show her true colours to those she feels she can. What makes Azura such a great character is that in every pathway in the game she is very much the neutral party that doesn't believe there is a true right and wrong way to resolve this conflict, but she goes along with Corrin's decision and what Corrin believes in, as well as being the one that bears through the pain of what happened because she knows that there isn't a clear pathway to peace and no one is in the right or wrong. This is exactly what Fates is about. At the end of the day, neither Nohr or Hoshido are completely good or bad, and their actions are a similar state of moral grey. Azura believes this and acknowledges that whoever she sides with isn't the clear-cut right side, but rather each side is doing what they have to because of the situation, not what they want to do, and there's a term for this type of analogy. It's called Fire Emblem. Gameplay-wise, Azura might just be the most surprisingly good unit in Fate and Fire Emblem as a whole, since her class is more suited to the role of support only. But damn can Azura hold her own in a fight and should be a unit that is with you in every chapter. Azura being a dancer is mainly focused on allowing your units to move additional spaces and give them a boost, so naturally she's a fantastic support unit. However, Azura is able to fight other units and stat-wise she's got great strength and luck, often being able to do a lot of damage and dodge most 60 to 70% attacks, as well as getting an 80% speed and skill growth rate. It's a wonder that she isn't a ninja with these stats. Because of this, Azura can work as an offensive and supporting unit, as well as being a front runner for the first couple of chapters, but she will have to be pushed back due to her low defense and HP later on in the game, but never someone to bench because she's just so useful. And there you have it, Azura is easily the best character in Fire Emblem Fates, being a surprisingly good unit and the most unique, interesting, complex and downright intriguing character in the game, which is why she takes the #1 spot of my favourite character from Fire Emblem Fates. This has been CRASHX500. I wish you all a great night, take care, and at this point I can safely say that Fates has one of my favourite cast of characters in the entire series, and some of them are my favourite characters in the series as a whole. And while all the characters I've mentioned are either great or outstanding, Azura is the one worthy to be the ocean's grey waves. Thank you for personifying Fire Emblem's true meaning. Hey everyone, thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to give this video a like, and if you'd like to know when more of my videos are coming out, be sure to subscribe to my channel to keep updated. For alternate video recommendations, I first point you to top 10 Nohr characters, where I talk about even more characters from Nohr and more in depth, top 10 Hoshido characters, which I talk about more Hoshido characters and even more in depth, and finally for something similar, my top 20 characters from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, where I look at my favourite characters from the Tellius series. Hopefully one of those videos should be to your liking. Until next time, I'll see you later.